What makes a good e-ticket? Recently, I've heard a lot of criticism of Avengers Campus at Disney's California Adventure, and even more criticism of the version at Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris, soon to be renamed to Adventure World. So, let's go through the Avengers Campuses and touch on them now, because they're what made me think about what makes a good e-ticket in the first place, so by talking about Avengers Campus, you'll be able to better follow my thought process. Please keep in mind, I haven't been to either of these campuses. I am basing everything off of multiple sources from other people and footage online. I've heard multiple opinions and have experienced the rides through POVs to the best of my ability, but I have not actually been there, so take it with a grain of salt. At California Adventure, you walk into Avengers Campus, and it's themed around a building that used to be a Stark building of some sort, but was converted into, I'm gonna say, Stark's Epcot. I mean, Howard Stark was totally Walt Disney and Iron Man 2, so I think it's fair to say it's a permanent World's Fair, but for the Avengers, where they all come together and share their technology and their culture, and the Wakandans are there, and the Sorcerers are there, and the Guardians of the Galaxy are there too. It's supposed to be there to train the next generation of Avengers. The first criticism is that the land is bland, and from what I've seen, gotta admit, it's not their best work. The sightlines are a bit messed up, and it is a bit clinical, like a warehouse, but there are some splashes of color, and some interestingly designed buildings. I think the web building is probably the best, and they do have these cool lights on the ground. And of course, the big Avengers A. And I think these elements on the ground add a lot. They have this cool decahedron thing outside the Sanctum Sanctorum area, and looking at a Quinjet model just sitting right there in the world is great. There's all these little details that make it not like they didn't extremely cheap out on this, but I can't say that this is Pandora level world immersion. It's certainly worse at Paris with their queues and restaurants, but the California one is slightly better, and it looks better at night when the semi-generic modern corporate lights on the buildings are lit. The problem is that it looks corporate, that's it, but this is frankly what I would have expected an Avengers-themed area to look like. It was a Stark warehouse canonically, and I don't think there's an excuse for the buildings to just look like a clinical empty warehouse, like the Stark restaurant in Paris. It should look Disney quality, but I think it's possible to make it look like something Stark Industries would fund without making it look like a cheap, undecorated warehouse. And it looks like they could be doing better, but at California, I think they did it. The ambiance is there, they have some variety, the sanctum area is there, and it doesn't look unnatural, it transitions cleanly into it, and they have some cool features that make me say they didn't have to do that if they were only doing the bare minimum. They wouldn't have done that. Outside the web building, there's a mural done by Miles Morales. That's cool. There's everything on the ground is something they wouldn't have done. It adds a lot, another aspect to the environment, and I don't think they would have done that if they were fully cheaping out. Like, you would see them, it would just be concrete, and that wouldn't even be a big thing, but the fact that they put those lights there is a good sign. Like, that makes it slightly better, and you notice, in my opinion. They failed this assignment at Paris more so, though. They have a restaurant that's just a warehouse. They have the PIM test kitchen, and frankly, I think the PIM test kitchen is great. I don't think they're going to make a full Ant-Man themed attraction, and from what I've seen, Nano Battle at Hong Kong is static and not good, so that's probably for the best. But using the concept of the PIM particles for a restaurant is so creative. They have these giant cans of soda in the ceiling and this weird novelty of the portion sizes. I love this. I wouldn't have thought of this. I don't know how good the food is, but as a concept for a restaurant, this is an A+ in my book. The Paris version is not as good. It doesn't have those things. That doesn't apply to the Paris version. But at California, they also have this reference to Bountiful Valley Farms, which is what was in the land before Bugs Land, which is what was there before Avengers Campus. And that's cool. I like that. Next, we should talk about the walking character meet and greets. I've heard some people say that Disney is considering meet and greets their own attraction, and they aren't. And we'll get to how much substance I think Avengers Campus has, but the meet and greets are a good thing. It's great to have characters walking around. We wanted walking droids at Galaxy's Edge, and for the same reason, walking characters are great. They add life to the land, and that's something Avengers Campus does well with its live shows and characters walking around. Tony Stark's a busy man. It makes far more sense to him to be walking around the campus he created when he meets you than for him to be sitting in a room all day taking pictures. I think we need more of this. The walk-around characters shouldn't be criticized at all. Criticize the lack of things here all you want, but don't use the characters as ammunition towards that. So, at California, they have Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, and that's not new, but that's good. That's a good ride. I don't have much to say about it. We should talk about Flight Force, which is at Paris. California exclusively has Guardians, and then Paris exclusively has Flight Force. Both in addition to the Spider-Man ride. And regarding Flight Force, from everything I've heard, it isn't good, and from what I've seen, I have to agree. It looks bland, like it lacks effort. It's a reskin of Paris's Rock and Roller Coaster, and it features Iron Man and Captain Marvel flying through space on a few screens you see for fractions of a second. I think that a screen or projection-based reskin of Rock and Roller Coaster should work in concept. Like, I think that Hollywood Studios' Rock and Roller Coaster should be reskinned to Doctor Strange, but maybe this is put into perspective, because if it doesn't work for this, there's no way my Doctor Strange idea is possible, but maybe this is only bad because they're spending so little money and effort on Paris's campus. I think it could work. Yeah, I think you just need to combine projection screens with physical sets. The only thing I want to say about Flight Force is that Flight Force is such a bland name, and it doesn't make sense anywhere in the timeline with Iron Man and Captain Marvel teaming up. But then again, neither does Sam Wilson's Captain America and Black Widow existing in the same land. Then we have Web Slingers, which is the only other attraction at both parks. California only has this in Breakout, and Paris only has this in Flight Force. And this ride has been controversial. Firstly, people say it's just a bad ride and a waste of the Spider-Man IP. It's a shooting gallery ride where you web up spider bots with arm movement. People are going to compare this to Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, and yeah, that ride's great. But I think that conceptually, this is good too. The Universal ride puts you into a Spider-Man comic book, but Disney wouldn't try to do the same thing. I think it's good they didn't try to do the same thing. No matter what they did, it would be compared to Universal's, and while Universal's might be better, I don't think this is a bad direction. I think the logic makes sense. I don't think it's possible for them to create a theme park ride that immersively gives you the sensation of swinging like Spider-Man, so then went with the experience of throwing webs like Spider-Man. That makes sense. The technology works really well. From what I've heard, it tracks your arm perfectly. It's not new technology, but it is new for Disney, and I think it's a good fit for this ride. They've implemented it very well. Another criticism is that there's no villains in the ride, and I agree, it could use a villain. There are so many unused villains you could use who could hack into the spider bots or something like that. You could insert one into the concept of the ride so easily. Part of me wonders to what degree Sony had an influence on this ride, and as far as I understand, when it comes to Spider-Man, Sony only owns the rights to the movies, and Disney owns Marvel, which owns everything else. But maybe getting Tom Holland's Spider-Man specifically, which is a movie depiction of Spider-Man, was difficult, and they had to negotiate with Sony, and maybe Sony only let them have Tom Holland's Spider-Man and not any villains. I don't know why Sony would not let them have one. I don't see what Sony would lose, but that possibility occurred to me. Hey, so this is me during editing. I thought about it more, and I realized that doesn't make any sense. Sony couldn't have possibly stopped them from adding a villain, because while Sony owns the rights to those villains, again, they only own the movie rights. And the only way they could stop them from putting a villain in there is if they wanted to put a version of a villain from the MCU Spider-Man movies or one of the other Sony Spider-Man movies specifically. I think. So it doesn't make any sense. It was entirely their choice not to put a villain in there. And as far as I understand, they can still use Spider-Man in the other movies per their deal with Sony. And I don't think they need permission or anything. There might have been like a specific number on the contract of how many movies they could feature him in before the contract needed to be renewed. But I don't think it makes any sense that Sony would have stopped them. That was just, I didn't think that it had been that much of a factor, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Sony probably did not stop them. I don't think they had the power to stop them from putting a villain in there, so it was entirely their choice. Then there's the web shooters. You can buy little spider bots and web shooters and the web shooters influence your game. They give you slightly more points, and I'm in full agreement. That's yucky. I know they want to sell web shooters and spider bots, and I'd love to buy web shooters and spider bots. I don't blindly see this as a bad thing that they want to sell these toys, because yeah, they're cool. And I think it's cool that you can have a product that you buy in the land that can have an effect on the ride. But I don't think that giving you a skill boost is the right way to do it. Even if it's only a little and doesn't change your points all that much, it's about the principle. It's the wrong way to do it. If I was doctoring this ride, I'd have a villain be the one to hack the spider bots, maybe Alistair Smythe. He's a tech guy, it would make sense to have him hacking stuff, and I doubt that they're motivated to add him to the MCU or Sony's Spider-Man universe in the future. And even if Sony does want to add him, there's a multiverse. This can just be this dimension's variation of Smythe. The amusement park lands aren't even technically canon to the MCU, they're an entirely separate universe. So it'd go a long way just putting a villain in there. And instead of having the web shooters give you more points, I would have it if you're wearing a web shooter, you might get like a little mini boss in one of the scenes. Like, if you're wearing a regular web shooter, you could get a bigger spider bot that might spawn more spider bots at an alarming rate. If you're wearing an Iron Man repulsor, there can be a spider bot made of an Iron Man suit prototype that was lying in the warehouse, and it'll be stronger and take more webs to break the shell off. And it could act like a shield for the other spider bots. That'd be a cool way of having the toys interact and giving people a different experience for their money without giving them an advantage. Or maybe that's worse, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Personally, I think paying to make it more challenging is better than paying to make it less challenging. So ultimately, I think that Web Slingers is a good ride. But even with the more positive opinions I've given, I can't say it's a good e-ticket. It's not an e-ticket, but the problem is it's the only new ride at Avengers Campus, making it the premier attraction of the land at its opening. The other rides are reskins, and Flight Force is not great. Breakout is good, and some consider it to be the e-ticket of Avengers Campus, but I don't. It's part of Avengers Campus, and it is an e-ticket, but it's not the Avengers Campus e-ticket. Web Slingers can't stand on its own, it needs something else, and the fact that it's the only new attraction at either of these versions of Avengers Campus is really bad. So, Avengers Campus needs a new e-ticket. But what makes a good e-ticket? Let's examine some examples of e-tickets and see if we can find the formula. Let's start by talking about Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. I have heard some criticism of this ride, but the criticism is mainly that it doesn't belong at Epcot, and that doesn't have any bearing on this topic. As a ride, the consensus seems to be that it's good. Cosmic Rewind is obviously a roller coaster, so it provides some thrill, and it has these unique ride vehicles that spin around, pointing you at wherever is appropriate. It combines physical sets with projections and screens, and the screen technology is well done in this case. It also plays 80s music while you're going through the roller coaster, which makes for a cool experience. Then there's Radiator Springs Racers at Cars Land. It uses the slot car system seen in Test Track. Half of it is a dark ride, and half of it is a high-speed section where you race against another car full of guests. There's intricate rock work all around you, depicting the Monument Valley from the Cars movie. Another e-ticket that people really like is Flight of Passage at Pandora, and that's an advanced version of the Flying Theater seen in Soarin', where in this version, 3 layers of riders board vehicles designed to make you feel like you're flying a Banshee. It simulates the drops and takes you through the environment of Pandora. And these unique vehicles where they immerse you on a Banshee, where you can feel like the Banshee breathing beneath you, this is a unique ride system. It's built off of the same idea as Soarin', and that it's a flying theater, but the system is entirely different, and it uses this unique ability to tie you in to the experience of flying a Banshee. Last example is Rise of the Resistance. Now, Rise of the Resistance uses the trackless dark ride system, and while that system has still only been used in a few Disney rides so far, it's surprising to see a dark ride be a successful e-ticket. But the charm of Rise of the Resistance is that There's basically several pre-shows that all feature effects that immerse you in the world of Star Wars before you even get on the vehicles, which makes the experience feel more real. It combines these sections where you're just walking through these areas, and then that's combined with the dark ride sections, and even there's a drop tower at one point. Its appeal is in its combination of ride systems and its focus on being an experience and being immersive. It's an immersive experience. So, what do all of these examples have in common? Well, if you ask me, they all let you experience what people would want to do in the universes they're in. With Rise of the Resistance, you're in the action, breaking out of a Star Destroyer, and you feel like you're really there. Of course, flying on a Banshee is the thing you'd want to do if you were on Pandora, and the experience of being a part of the Guardians crew could probably be reduced to flying through space really fast while pumping rocking retro tunes. And what would you want to do if you were in the world of Cars? Well, I know what some of you would want to do, but I'm choosing to pretend you don't exist. As for the normal people, it makes sense to want to go fast through the desert. It's about cars after all. And then there's immersion. All of these put you in unique environments, from the alien landscape of Pandora to a Star Destroyer to the Monument Valley to space. We want to look at stuff, the stuff and places from these worlds, and I doubt any of these rides would be loved if your Banshees were flying through an endless sky not close enough to see Pandora, if you were racing through a generic parking lot, or if Cosmic Rewind always had the lights on. So that's what it comes down to. 1, give a cool experience, and 2, give us things to look at. In fact, those might not just be the principles to a good e-ticket, but to a good ride in general. After talking about this, I think I understand why Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is more popular than Web Slingers. It's like a precursor to Rise of the Resistance. It fully immerses you in the middle of the action with Spider-Man. Like I said, I understand the experience they were trying to give you with Web Slingers, shooting webs like Spider-Man, but it's far less immersive. While you do travel around the locations of Avengers Campus, there isn't as much to look at. Every place we see is somewhere we can see elsewhere in the park. Amazing Adventures is far more immersive. You end up traveling through set pieces of New York during a battle between Spider-Man and villains with all these cool effects happening. Maybe you could say they aren't putting effort into Avengers Campus because it's at California Adventure and its replacement of Bugs Land, working with limited space. And maybe if it was in Orlando, where the theme park war is waged and where Disney gets most of their money, it would have more effort. But I don't think Disney can have that mentality, because they can't use these characters at Disney World. California should have the definitive Marvel theme park experience. No one should be saying this land is mediocre. Disney needs to step up their game and get another ride at Avengers Campus. Web Slingers being the only new ride isn't enough. It's not an e-ticket. And the only rides being this Avengers-themed land being Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man? That's weak. I'll give the Paris version this. Having one of their attractions headline Iron Man is far better balancing. He's the main character of the MCU. He needs to be there, even if the ride he's in isn't good. We need something new and innovative in Avengers Campus, because I think this land is almost great. Even with a new e-ticket, I wouldn't say it's the apex of what a Marvel theme park land could be, but I think if it had another big attraction that Web Slingers could complement, the consensus would be that this is a well-done land. At least in California. Even if Paris got a new e-ticket, it would still need a bit of work. There was an Avengers e-ticket planned. Some have said it's going to be canceled, but I'm optimistic. The space is there. Whatever they put there has to be a part of Avengers Campus, and they just filed a trademark for a more advanced, thrilling and free-moving ride system similar to Soarin's Flying Theaters that fits with the rumors. And I think Disney knows the potential of Marvel. I hope they see the importance that California's Adventures Campus needs to have. And I think we'll see a new e-ticket come soon, and then we'll truly be able to say that Avengers Campus is a great themed land. Still not great that we have to wait for it, though. What is it with these new Disney immersive lands and only having 2 attractions when they open? Pandora had a third attraction that was cut. Galaxy's Edge had a third attraction that was cut. These lands are empty. They're great lands, but they're empty. Get these guys their third attractions. We need the Phase 2s. Let the Avengers E-ticket survive against all odds, and please don't stop there. Avenge the fallen rides. Fix this land and make the good ones even better. Please, Disney, I'll do anything. I'll go to Disney World for a full week. I'll stay on property. I'll buy a popcorn bucket. I'm not strongly attached to any of my non-vital organs. Does Josh DeMero need a kidney? What's his blood type? He can have my kidney. I'll buy a gallon of your blue milk. Build 12 lightsabers. I'll buy one enhancing web shooter for each arm.